Great. Thank you, Jenny. And Steph, you did a great segue into my presentation. Folks, let me know if you can see that okay?
Yeah.
Great. Well, I'm very excited to talk to you today and share some information about birds. They are some of my most favorite critters. And some of you may have seen, oh, it's not moving now. Come on. Some of you, actually, there's some real bird pros in the room as I scroll through. But some of you might have seen this saying that went around on social media during COVID, and it really resonated with me. And it's something like this: sometimes I feel quite depressed, but then I remember birds exist. And I think it resonated with me because it really reminded me of the magic and the beauty and sort of the awesomeness of birds that are all around us. They are amazing creatures. They fill our lives with color and song and movement. They're usually, we're lucky in Canada and in BC, they're usually a part of pretty well every child's life, even if it's only sort of as a backgrounder. And I really think, exploring birds with students, I think it really helps make them more aware of local environment and the amazing diversity that we have in British Columbia. And I think we can also, there's so many cool citizen science bird projects that students can actually collect some pretty valuable data too, and really participate in that. But since it's fall, as Steph mentioned, I'd like to talk a little bit about migration, which is what a lot of birds are doing right now. So many birds take these incredible, amazing long distance journeys across our planet. So I want to talk about a little bit about how they do it, how they find their way. Some of the challenges that they have, and also sort of how we can help as educators. First of all, I want to share some amazing migration statistics with you. These kind of things blow my mind. So these little guys, black-polled warblers, so they weigh, half an ounce or 12 grams or 12 raisins. I always like using measurements. It makes sense to me. And they breed in the boreal forest of North America, and they winter in South America. And they do this crazy nonstop flight over the Atlantic. It takes 86 hours about, and they go more than 3,600 kilometers. So pretty incredible feats of athleticism for these little birds. We may be more familiar with rufous hummingbirds in BC if we have hummingbird feeders. So these little guys are like 3 raisins or 3 paper clips. Tiny little birds, beautiful little gems, flying gems, and their one-way migration from BC to Mexico and vice versa is about 6,400 kilometers. So this is interesting because it's actually the longest migration in the world measured as distance relative to body temperature, body length. When you realize how small these birds are, it just amazes me even more so. And then finally, I think we have to talk a little bit about the Arctic tern, which is just this gorgeous, graceful bird that's an incredible flyer. So they complete the longest migration ever recorded. So basically almost 70,000 kilometers, and they do this every year. And they're a fairly long-lived bird, which is amazing. They'll live up to 15, 16 years. When you think of the work that they that they put in every year, it's amazing that they do. So Arctic to Antarctica, twice around the planet, and Google these birds. They're beautiful to watch in flight if you haven't ever seen them. So how do they do it? It's interesting because scientists aren't exactly totally sure, but they believe there's a whole complex set of sort of sensory cues that birds use. Photoperiods like day length, so as the days get shorter, like now, it sort of triggers birds' responses to start getting out of here and getting to warmer spots. There's visual cues that they use, so things like the sun, they navigate by the stars. Has anybody heard migrating birds in the last couple of nights? I love hearing that sound that when you go outside, high up in the sky. Apparently they use coastlines and mountain ranges too, so visual cues like that. Magnetism, this is also amazes me. So many birds have these tiny bits of iron in their inner ears, and this allows them to find north. So they can use the Earth's magnetic field, which is of course stronger at the poles and weaker at the equator. And then weather, they also hop on storms after big systems come through to give themselves a bit of a break. So what about challenges? So unfortunately, there's a ton of challenges that birds face sort of every day, but also particularly when they start moving in migration. So habitat loss is a major one, both habitat loss in their summering grounds and their wintering grounds. Deforestation, development, etc. One of the things that surprises me and depresses me is that cats are probably the #1 challenge for birds. I have heard that they kill an estimated 1 billion birds a year in North America. And I recently read a statistic that actually adds up to more than that. It's estimated that cats kill 4 to 5 million birds in North America a day. It's a pretty shocking statistic. Oil spills are another one. Sadly, you may have heard in the news lately about that awful pipeline spill off the coast of California, Huntington Bay. Huge areas for birds to rest and gather and feed during migration. So it's a real tragedy sort of at any time of the year, but particularly, I think, now. Power lines especially tricky for raptors. I think because they have such a big wingspan that they, each side of the wings can touch a power line and they get electrocuted. And then, of course, our windows that reflect the sky so birds don't see them and they crash into them, and the lights of buildings at night, particularly office towers that confuse birds, and often they cause crashes as well. So lots of challenges for these guys to navigate through, and in addition to the amazing athletic feats that they got to do. So there's lots of ways individually that we can help birds, and I know probably everybody on this webinar does a lot of these things. But I think in terms of being an educator, I think raising awareness of birds and how amazing they are with students is a great place to start. You can get students to study groups of birds, list all the birds that they know of and that they can think of, start categorizing those, even choose one to become an expert on. This is a great little learning tool from the Cornell lab that it provides these silhouettes of sort of the main groups of birds. And it's a good way to get students thinking about groups of birds and their shapes and their families. And of course, there's a nice little cheat sheet that they send along as well. So we're going to give you all these resources after the webinar. I think, the most fun part of studying birds, I think, is just watching them. So not getting too caught up in the identification parts to start with, but just enjoying all the behaviors that they do. This is a HCTF resource that some of you probably use, this Bird Behavior Bingo. And it's a nice way to give a focus to students watching birds. And I'll just mention quickly too, this resource. It's an older resource, this International Migratory Bird Day Educators Package, which is the second Saturday in May, which is a nice time to get out and bird watch. Those two websites also have some great activities and resources. But these are some of the worksheets from that Educators Package. There's this nice bird topography worksheet to help with bird ID, nice migratory mapping piece of North America with some bird banding data of a couple of species, so students can actually plot these locations on a map. And they've got this great useful habitat survey sheet that students can use to go out. You can assess your school grounds or your backyard or your park. And then there's a checklist that they produce, and then a worksheet that says, how you can improve that for birds. So lots of great stuff out there. So thanks, folks, for your attention, and happy birding. And I'm going to pass it over to Stephanie, who's going to take us outside.